Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Board of Education meeting. Sorry for the delay. We are experiencing some technical difficulties. I'm going to call the meeting to order at 6:15 p.m. And if we could just please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mrs. Giller?
Here.
Mr. Pascal? Here. Mr. Jackson? Here. Mrs. Dion? Mrs. Carey? Here. Mr. Annaly? Here. Mr. Nolan? Excused.
Excused.
Good evening. Thank you for joining us. A pleasure to be here in person with our Board of Education members. The last time we were all together in this room was March 11th. So it's really a pleasure that we are all here tonight in the library of the Cohoes Middle School. I would ask if you could go back to the opening slide, Erin, and I just wanted to just give a shout out to some of these teachers today. So we had the pleasure of visiting some of our buildings this morning, and you can see that's Erlene Mayo from Harmony Hill, so a big shout out to her. And she's holding these little, I don't know, cubbies that students will each grab and they'll go outside. She has those pads that students can sit on outside. She has whiteboards, little mini whiteboards. She has clipboards in them. So just, I thought, really, really creative. And then here we have Steve Darwalk, and he is the cleaner from Abram Lansing. And you can see he is adjusting a desk. So that was one of the big switches. We don't have tables in our classrooms, we have desks. And teachers have really gone out of their way to really make sure that they're well equipped. And here we have our first grade, two members of our first grade team from Abram Lansing. That's Jen Crescetti and Katie Dobbins. And in the background is one of our new student teachers, and definitely met a lot of student teachers. So again, we are committed to promoting our profession and to inspiring the next generation of teachers, even if it's during COVID. So please go ahead. Again, if you have any comments this evening, please email them to boardofed.comment@cohoes.org, and we would be happy to address them for you. So we had our first virtual parent academy, and that was last week. It was supporting your child's social emotional needs in the transition back to school. So it was very well attended, and I believe we have had about 125, 150 views on the YouTube channel, and Rachel Marcel and Erin Hill did a fantastic job. So if you haven't viewed that, please take a chance, and very, very informative and very, very helpful for our families in sending their children back to school or being home with them virtually. So September 14th is another very, very important event for our parents in educating our parents, navigating the district's technology platforms to support remote learning. So if you're interested in ClassLink, Schoology, Google, Classroom, Parent Square, and Zoom, which we all need to be, please listen to that, and it will be presented by Jen San Giacomo, our instructional technology integration specialist. So we're grateful for her efforts there. So there were updates. So we now have a New York State Department of Health data dashboard requiring districts to report on COVID testing on a daily basis. So we have to report by school. We need to include information on total enrollment in person, for students and teachers and staff and total enrollment in our virtual model off-site. And then the number of COVID cases in those areas. So we did submit the last 2 days, and our COVID cases are 0 at this time. So Executive Order 202.55 was extended, allowing board meetings to be held virtually. So that's always an option, but we're here to be here, and we're happy to be here in person. And Executive Order 202.45 allows districts to be open for in-person instruction. So we're glad about that. And then updates from SED. So I don't think our students are going to like this one, but there is a 1-year pilot allowing districts to pivot to remote learning instead of having a snow day. So this is something that I will be talking to our associations with and our collective bargaining organizations, so we can discuss, well, what does that look like? What are the expectations for all staff on those days? So no more 2-hour delays, everybody. So this could be, I think, exciting. There are also waivers for the 180-day and minimum instructional hour requirement due to COVID, and we are going to fill that out just in case there is something we hadn't planned for. So we'll be working on that. And yes, so the reopening plan is here. We're opening. So elementary, okay, our in-person and fully virtual model for grades grades 1 through 5, opening this Friday. So we're excited to see everyone. Pre-K is Monday, September 14th, and that was changed back to Monday, September 14th, and kindergarten is beginning September 16th. Materials and Chromebook pickup, September 10th, okay, that's tomorrow from 11 to 2, and our principals have already communicated that with their families. Middle and high school, grades 6 and 9 for in-person orientation will be this Friday. And our other grade levels in our middle school and high school will be learning asynchronously for that day. And all students, Monday's a gold day and Tuesday's a blue day. So all students, whether you're virtual or in person. Chromebook pickup will be September 11th. That is Friday from noon to 3. So we're grateful for our tech staff and for Sylvie Joseph, who has been working round the clock literally to make sure that our Chromebooks are all set for distribution. So let me just give you a little snapshot about what that looks like. So we're distributing 9 Chromebooks from Van Skyke, 23 at Harmony Hill, 29 at Abram Lansing, 37 at the middle school, and 39 at the high school. So those are the numbers at this time. So we also are sending out reminders to our parents about the health attestation for Friday. So we have been successful this week with our staff members and filling it out, and everybody's getting into the routine, and we're getting our procedures all down. So that is all going well. And so now our families will also do that for their children, and we will also be taking temperatures beginning on Friday of our students. So what do our numbers look like right now for our virtual program? So far, 424 totally, 64 students with an IEP. Numbers are still fluctuating, and we're allowing movement where we still have capacity and openings. So we have 1 section each, okay, at K2, and 2 sections each at 3-5. But you can see in some of the grade levels, the numbers are pretty significant, pretty high. So this is for our first 10-week period. And then parents will get an opportunity to switch back if they would like to. And also, if students really aren't logging in or doing well in the virtual model, we will recommend that they return to the in-person, that they come back to the in-person model.
So that slide is only virtual students.
Only virtual, and we will give you an updated grid of our class sizes on Friday. So let us start school. We do have a number of students who are still looking to register. And I know that there are students who are from other districts who are looking for a district that's in person and that opportunity for their children. So we have gotten a number of calls. We are, if we have room. So now I'm going to mute and I'm going to have Peggy O'Shea talk about our superintendent conference days.
With the teachers. All of our professional development, though, has been virtual. We've had live virtual meetings in PD, elementary grade level, secondary department meetings, and virtual teachers, and also ClassLink training was live. ClassLink is the platform that will allow us to roster all of our students throughout the district through school tools. As they enter, it'll be automatically rostered. And when students sign in using their Chrome account, they will be able to click on an icon and access the platform they're using versus having to remember all various usernames and passwords, which will be very helpful, especially in virtual and if we did need to go remote. There were also live virtual or self-directed sessions, Google Classroom, Zooming with your students, consistent practices in Schoology, which was also included in Google Classroom, and social emotional learning and cultural responsiveness. So depending on the comfort level, teachers could either sign up to be live virtual meetings or self-directed. And then all self-directed trainings were COVID-19, data security and privacy, Parent Square, our new communication platform, and HasCom. So as part of the social emotional learning, the elementary teachers came together for a consistent platform for welcoming back their students through the second step social emotional curriculum. And then beginning the week of October 5th, have consistent week by week lessons in terms of social emotional. Our social workers also met and discussed building level plans and ways to assist. So there was also focus during this time on looking at the priority standards for the grade levels, looking at the standards that are in the previous grade levels, the prerequisite skills, and beginning to map the resources we use to those standards for consistency. And the October 20th staff development, we do have a half day that day. That focus will be on differentiating instruction for all learners. And in the meantime, we'll be sharing resources with all the teachers.
So this is Stacy Mackey speaking. We were fortunate enough to participate in an advocacy call with Assemblymember McDonald this week. We had the opportunity to discuss the state aid reductions and the circumstances here as it impacts Cohoes City School District. Assemblymember McDonald did advise us on some current initiatives that he's working on. The first being that the reduction should be shared across all educational platforms. So this would take into account payments to charter schools, tuition payments to charter schools, as well as private schools and BOCES. The second initiative is the inequities and the 20% broad brush approach for all school districts. He talked about the high need districts and the urban districts being impacted with the number of services that are required. And we had the opportunity to remind him of districts that had been identified as being in fiscal stress by the Office of the State Comptroller, and that Cohoes checked each one of these boxes. He also discussed the potential timeline. There is a federal budget deadline approaching within the next 2 to 3 weeks. He did advise that he anticipates going into session immediately following that federal deadline. Next slide, please. This is just a reminder of the state aid reductions that all school districts in New York State are going through. So in July, the Department of Budget began approving general support payments that were scheduled at 80% of the otherwise scheduled amounts. So I do have one update from the last time that we met. So last time we had met, we had talked about excess cost aid, pre-K, and the Future Ready grants being impacted, and we were informed that the BOCES aid payment, the check is in the mail, and the anticipated impact is $140,000. Again, these are all 1920 revenues, so these are prior year revenues. Assemblymember McDonald also had advised that he would expect the Department of Budget to provide a detailed plan to the legislature in the coming months. And he did advise that these are really unprecedented times, and that absent of any federal relief, he would expect the 20% aid reductions to continue throughout the school year. Next slide, please. This is also a reminder of what we spoke about the last time we had met. Regarding the state aid and the 20% reduction for the 2021 fiscal year, we could be looking at a $5 million impact here in Cohoes. We're still unclear if that's going to flow through to any of our grants or state grants. We will have to watch cash flow very closely. The next time we meet, you will have a cash flow analysis, and we'll talk about that at each of the second scheduled meetings each month. And then obviously this is going to impact our fiscal wellness, and it's going to impact our long range plan. So we'll have to revisit that as well. So we had talked about the district action plan the last time we met. I'll just give an update. So we did implement an immediate spending freeze. The only exceptions are health and safety items. We will continue to evaluate each vacant position and whether or not we're going to be able to fill those positions. We were able to renegotiate the pre-K contract that is on tonight's agenda, and we have termed 2 other contracts. So on tonight's agenda, we're rescinding the ARC contract. We're not going to be able to approve that contract, and we have termed weeding and pruning contract as well, effective October 1st. We do have meetings scheduled with our bargaining units on September 22nd. We will discuss at the September 23rd board meeting. We'll have an update on a revised spending plan. We'll talk about reductions, and then we would expect to have board action at the October 7th meeting. So outside of state aid, we have other things happening. BOCES business office update. Summer purchasing, we're extremely busy this summer. PPE is something that we don't usually purchase at the levels we've been purchasing. So we had 400 requisitions in July and August, over 18 million. So that's a scary number. Most of that is going to be benefits, right? The annual spending for benefits and our BOCES. Just about 4 million of that is actual, materials and supplies, PPE, services, et cetera. We did kick off the September tax collection, and we are dependent on that revenue source, particularly with the reductions that we've seen from what we anticipated for revenues for the summer. So thank you very much to all of our taxpayers. We appreciate you. The financial audit fieldwork is wrapping up. The on-site work has been complete. We're just wrapping up some loose ends. We do have the tentative audit committee meeting on 9/29. We'll send out the reports and the agenda prior to the meeting. If we need to reschedule for any reason, I'll provide an update the next time we meet. As far as reports, financial reporting, the financial transparency report was submitted to the Department of Budget on the deadline, September 4th. We do have to get those reports onto the website, so that's an action item for me. ST3 reports are in progress, and then as I had already discussed, we'll be talking about cash flow at our next meeting. So I'll work with our district treasurer on that analysis, and we'll talk about that along with the updates from our meetings.
Does any of the board have any questions on the presentation?
Sorry, I shared it late. I shared it around 5 o'clock. You didn't get it? Okay.
So I just got one question. How many kids are currently going to charter schools from within the district? Roughly.
How many kids are in charter
I
schools?
think it
Yeah.
was like 46.
Yeah, around 50, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
It's an $800,000 bill.
How many students are enrolled in charter schools in the district was the question. Yes.
I know there's discussion regarding payment for charter schools. If we do have a reduction, that should be across the board. Has there been any resolution to that? If there is a cut, will that be less of an expenditure for charter school, or has not been resolved from state level?
He's working on a 20% reduction across the board, which would include charter school payments. I have advised accounts payable to hold 20%.
Whatever we have to absorb, they should have to absorb the same.
So we had to start making payments in July. So I advised with the next scheduled payment to withhold 20% and take it from July forward. Yep.
I have a couple of questions related to the presentation. First, I was wondering, we have some Zoom training that was listed there, Peg. Is that for specific grade levels? Is everybody using Zoom? Because I've heard of some incidents still where there has been some disruptions in some of the meetings where people have gone in and hacked a Zoom meeting. Is that still something that we're concerned about? Are we limiting it to just upperclassmen if we were to have a breach?
Zoom district-wide. It's through a cross-contract with BOCES. So, it is Ed Law 2D compliant. I can look into what you're saying about the potential breaches. I do know that was a concern previously, which is why we didn't use Zoom. But at this point in time, based on some information we have, and that is BOCES supported, we have moved to Zoom. Either way, we would have had to purchase either the enhanced Google Suite or Zoom beginning, because Google you have to pay for beginning in, I think it's October or the end of September, sometime soon. But this is the first I'm hearing that there's potential difficulties still. I will research and double check.
Those could be old reports, but it was a recent, it was something that I had heard recently, which is why I was asking.
Which is why we hadn't done it before, and then after the enhanced security features and working with BOCES, that's why we signed up.
So my other question, I guess, for you too was, during these superintendent conference days, have the teachers been prepped to go to remote learning tomorrow? Like, is everybody ready to transition on a dime?
So the requirements, so for example, at the elementary level, in the Google Classroom training, the requirements were that everyone set up their Google Classroom, not just the virtual teachers, but everyone. And then at the end, again, consistent conventions going forward. At the secondary level, that's why there was the training on consistent practices and Schoology and discussions that way. That was based on lessons learned during the closure. So everyone had to participate in Zoom training too. And there's an outline of expectations during the first weeks that teachers work with their students on, so that if we do have to close, that those are the areas that students know how to submit an assignment, how to sign on to a Meet, how to submit an assignment, where to go. And then also, you're going to hear more about this when Jen San Giacomo speaks, but today Erin and Jen are putting some finishing touches on a tech resource page that will be up, and for now it will be for our virtual parents and students, and then also for the hybrid day students. But then we have that ready, and it's on the website already, will be on the website already in case we have to transition.
So we feel pretty confident that it's not going to be an issue. I mean, I know that everybody had been doing this during the closure, but we have had some new staff and some who weren't as good at teaching in the remote world.
And Jen San Giacomo has had appointments throughout today on Zoom, for teachers who felt that they needed some more assistance. The other thing too that was emphasized over and over, it's important that everyone is moving in the same direction too in case of closure. So not just technology, but curriculum and content. And the expectation for closure was also made clear that it's going to be, if that happened, it would be more robust. So it would be not just ELA and math at the elementary. It would include second step social emotional. It would include either social studies or science, depending on what 5-week period we were in, and then of course all content areas at the secondary.
I was also wondering, with the class sizes, you had mentioned that you would send those out to us. Can you make sure that, like, when they get them, it's like class sizes by teacher assignment, so we have an idea of our fills and how many classrooms we're using and, number of students per classes? I mean, it doesn't have to be like a specific name. I'm just wondering if you can give us, 5 fifth grades at Harmony Hill with 10 kids, whatever the scenario is.
Get it to you as soon as we can.
Okay. Questions for Stacy. BOCES aid adjustments, have there been any conversations about our return on aid for next year? So all of the things that we purchase through BOCES that are aidable right now, is there a change in the percentage of what we'll receive back in the 21-22 school year?
So right now, as it stands, the 20% reduction is across all aid categories, including expense-driven aids, which includes BOCES. So we could see a 20% reduction in aid for BOCES. Absolutely.
So not only what it would be from what we would be expecting to receive for next year, right?
Well, it would still be 70%, but what I'm saying is they could take the 20% across. Correct. Could happen.
Could I just, so Sylvie texted that security has been added as well as moderation. So hosts have to admit people, et cetera. So there have been those security enhancements and so. Thank you, Sylvie.
Can we also, I'm just wondering if we can get an idea of what our tech, where our students stand, how many kids we don't have tech at home that we're not going to be able to provide it to, or have we advertised a bring your own device if you have it type of a thing? Just wondering like where we stand as far as, you know, opening day. If we did have to transition to remote, how many of our kids are going to be unreachable?
So I did report on the tech survey, the access survey last meeting, and we're roughly 63% of our families have a device at home that a student, one of their children could actually use for learning. So that's pretty low. So when we talk about the devices that we are distributing, those are for the fully virtual model. So we're all set there. But definitely, we've been promoting bring your own device. All the principals promoted that to their families. There were some families that contacted us and asked what kind of, laptop should I buy my child? And so we've definitely responded to those questions. But it will be a challenge if we have to go completely remote to make sure all of our families have a digital device at home to use for learning, and not just for 2 hours, but obviously for a full day.
It's not like, is a number that we gave in terms of devices needed. There are still certain number of parents at each of the buildings that we don't know because they didn't fill out the tech survey or respond to calls. So for example, of the virtual families at Lansing, with the devices we're giving the virtual students, I mean, there's about 20 families who are virtual that we're not quite sure of yet in terms of the device. So we're still working through those as, as there's, we have the lists and the Chromebooks designated to various students. So if parents show up for material distribution and say they don't have a device, we'll have to get one ready and have them come back because we weren't aware, but that's how we'll be reaching more parents. And then we will continue to keep going through the survey because we know since it was done through Parent Square, who did not respond.
Did we have any success in the request for donations?
So I was in contact with our grant writer, and she's continuing to work on it, but so far we haven't had any success.
Thank you. Okay, if there's no more questions from the board on the presentation, is there any questions on agenda items, discussion of agenda items? I don't really have a question, but more just a clarification that the agreement with the Boys and Girls Club for this school year, the September 1 to June 30, is a savings from what we had previously had with them, which is why we're going into this other agreement, correct?
On an annual basis, and we did renegotiate. We reduced one classroom, and yes, it is a savings, approximately $159,000.
Thank you. Any other questions on agenda items? That's fine.
Peggy, did you say the teachers have all been trained in Zoom? Is that what you said? Like,
I'll give Dr. Spring all the agendas. She can share all the staff development agendas with you on Friday and in the weekly update. And if you want, you can click on the link and go through the modules yourself and become a zealous Zoomer. But yeah, there were links for the trainings on the first day, and the requirement was the first 8 modules, but there were 22 modules there. And Jensen Giacomo has been working as well. Right, right. Just the other day.
Okay, and it looks like we have one comment on the BOE comment email. If anybody else has other comments on any of the agenda items or presentation today, feel free and send those in. Comment is, please explain how in-person students who need to quarantine for 2 weeks or who are sent home with COVID symptoms and are awaiting test results are going to continue to receive instruction.
So this is something that we have discussed with our Teachers Association, and the association is willing to revisit this once the school year begins. But we will begin with providing students materials like we always have done. And then if we need to look for a different model, the association is in support of having those discussions.
for the child will be marked absent, I guess is my question.
So again, the attendance, we're still working that out. I don't know if Peg wants to comment on that, but yes, we'll be using packets at this time, sending work home.
What would happen if it was an entire class, including the teacher who was quarantined?
Different scenario. Under that scenario, I think it makes sense that the class migrates to a virtual environment.
Yes, for me personally, in discussions with the Teachers Association, I would understand the hesitancy to have a classroom teacher cover both virtual and in person, obviously, but providing access to the lessons are already being provided for virtual seems like it would be an important middle ground to consider.
So these are all things that definitely will help support students who are absent.
So I'm sorry to ask, I just didn't hear. When are those conversations happening?
So we've been having these conversations, and we will continue to have these conversations with the association.
Is there an expectation? I mean, we're starting school next week. So, I mean, is there an expectation where you're thinking, you know, we want to get this taken care of by the fall? First semester, we've already decided, and this is the model we're going with first semester. Just curious to know, like, where the plan is going.
So I think the union is curious to see what the absences look like first. You know, how significant is this? And I think they're willing to come up with a different model if we need to.
Any other questions or comments?
Here we comment.
follow up. So there will be no continuity of instruction for a 2-week quarantine. I think that it's too early to say, make a call like that.
I guess my comment as a parent of 3 is I believe that should be a priority. If I have 3, and especially given how strict these requirements are this year, it's highly likely that I'm going to have a healthy kid sitting home that's willing and ready to learn. And paper packets, especially if we're anything remotely close to what we had in the spring, you're going to have a really unhappy parent.
Yes, I understand completely.
Is it possible?
Graders, or one 4th grader had to quarantine, that 4th grader could go with a teacher that's doing virtual if that was the situation. Maybe not in the same building, but.
So the virtual teachers already have their classes, their class lists and their students for the next 10 weeks. And we did not want to disturb that because some of those class sizes are very high. And then we also didn't want a student to get lost in the switch. So we think it's best that that teacher is still owned with that class. And again, we're working with our teachers to make sure that students aren't left behind, that continuity of instruction continues. Obviously, that's our priority. The association is absolutely willing, you know, to revisit this conversation once the school year starts.
Okay, so we did have another comment, and I do apologize. It was in the spam folder, so thank you very much, Pete. I'm going to just read it out. What can the community members do to help? I realize it might be small, but can we donate items like cleaning supplies, PPE, or any other COVID school supplies? Who should we be contacting in our local and state governments to voice our concerns over the 20% budget cut? And what should we do as parents to prepare for possible conversations to full virtual learning so that we can better support our children and teachers in this probable situation? Very good questions.
So I'm going to have Stacy help me on this, but I know that today the superintendent were meeting with John McDonald and Assemblymember John McDonald and Assemblymember Pat Fahey today at a press conference to really call attention to this plight and this tragedy of what is happening to our schools and our children. So I would continue to reach out to our state leaders as well as our federal leaders. And you know, when Congress goes back and they're starting to make some decisions on who they're funding and how much that is going to be. So that is one thing. And I, at this point, the conversion to full virtual learning, that would only be, I mean, I'm hoping that we are able to remain open, and I'm hoping that it doesn't come to the point where we have to close. But if we do, you know, what can parents do? Well, I think being able to support remote learning and using our digital platforms is something. So I would recommend the Virtual Parent Academy on Monday night. And social emotionally, we need to support our kids. I know our kids are excited to come back and our teachers are excited to see them. It's been a long time. And so we're hoping that, we're hoping it lasts. So what about donations of any supplies? Stacy, do you want to talk about that? I definitely, if there are any desktop computers that have Wi-Fi or laptops, those definitely could be used by families who don't have any devices for their children at home. I would say that would be the biggest priority. But Stacy, do you have any other ideas on any other donations that might be of use?
Yeah, so of course, we're always happy to accept donations, and we're very grateful and appreciative for any donations. Monetary donations would be to the attention of the district treasurer. And if you go on to our website, the name is Pam Sorrenzioni. Her phone number and her email address would be located on our district website. For any IT equipment that is working, I'm happy to coordinate that. And cleaning supplies, we have to be a little bit careful because we're limited on what we can use.
We haven't heard one thing.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
Sure. So what I was saying is we're always happy and grateful to accept donations, of course. If it were a monetary donation, then it would go to the attention of our district treasurer, who's Pam Sorrenzioni. Her contact information is on the district website. She's also located under the tax collection, so her phone number and her email address would be located on the website.
And Stacy, if somebody wants to donate to buy computers, they can specify to say, this money is to buy computers or to buy PPE, or like they can specify what if they want their donation to go something specific.
Absolutely. And the monetary, any donation, whether it's monetary or whether it's an actual item, is subject to board approval, of course. And yes, they can earmark it for a specific purpose. So if they wanted it used for PPE, they could say such on the memo on the check. If they wanted it for computer hardware, they would note that as well. And that would be noted in the board action as well. So if it were actually IT equipment, they can contact myself. I'm happy to work with them, or Sylvie Joseph, who is our IT director. And I was just saying that we have to be careful about cleaning supplies because we are limited on what we can use in school districts. We have to, it has to be a healthy option. Also, we have to have the sheets. So we have to be careful about cleaning supplies. But if you did have cleaning supplies, I would say you could contact our Buildings and Grounds Director, which is Jim Stapleton. Again, I'm happy to coordinate any donations. Yep, we could always use PPE as well. Correct. And we'd be very grateful to accept anything.
So then again, there is just another reiterated comment about students who would be sent out for any COVID-related symptoms or who were on quarantine. And it seems like, you know, this is an issue, a concern about no continuity of learning during the period of time that they're home. Would it be safe to say that we can have these conversations with the unit prior to our next meeting so that we can get an idea, you know, they're at least going to be 2 weeks in to the school year to talk about maybe what that's going to look like rather than just a paper packet going home and kids teaching themselves for 2 weeks. That would be okay? Okay. Okay, so I don't see any other comments here. I'm just going to do another quick double check because hard to. Okay, so I'm going to look for a motion that the board adopts the consent agenda. Items 6A through I and 7A through L, with item 7H amended to step 1. Can I get a motion? Thank you.
Sorry. Mrs. Giller?
Yes.
Mr. Pascal?
Yes.
Mr. Jackson? Mrs. Dion? Mrs. Carey? And Mr. Annaly?
Yes.
Thank you.
Is there any comments from the Board of Ed members on any other items not related to the agenda?
Our message to teachers with respect to the masks. I'm happy I got through this past hour, but I know we talked about mask breaks. What what are the teachers, what are we advising our teachers, especially with the younger kids that just have trouble spending the day with these masks?
So I did explain at our last board meeting that on the advisement of Dr. Whalen, who is the director of the Albany County Department of Health, and our school medical director, Dr. DeTerzi, that they are not in favor of mask breaks, that we need to build the habit of students wearing their masks at all times. So we are building the mask breaks into the school day. They are mostly outside, obviously, and I know teachers are taking students, that's their plan, to take students outside a lot across all grade levels. When students are eating, obviously, they will take their masks off. We're trying to limit any kind of really conversation and student, maybe shouting across the room because eating, should be more or less a silent activity. And then when they're done, they can put their masks back on and then they can, talk to their friends. But so we've been very careful about really enforcing the wearing of masks and being very careful in how we are allowing mask breaks.
After a few days or so, just what their observations are. And,
Yes.
And how that's going, especially with the younger kids.
Okay. Dates for future meetings, September 23rd, right here. We'll be meeting in person, but we'll be live streamed at 6 o'clock, same time. And then
This, I mean, we've heard nothing. I mean, it's very difficult back here with this on. I
Okay.
feel like this is not a good room for us to do this,
okay.
with the social distancing. I mean, as you recall, before, we had no mask and a microphone. And now, and we were together. Now we're all spread out, no microphone, and our faces are covered. I just don't think this is a good option for
Okay.
us to meet. Because I feel like I missed some things tonight. Nobody's fault.
So, no, the air conditioning unit is very loud. We could look at the high school gym.
I don't know, wherever it's just very, this has always been like this here. But now
Okay,
it's
so-
really a challenge.
If you guys can investigate some options, maybe then we can talk about it. But we will be in person, but the meeting will be live streamed for anybody that wants to participate.
Could I ask if we're considering the high school, for example, we might possibly be able to accommodate people that would like to come to the meeting and see us in person rather than the messages. I've been asked about that. If we are thinking of moving, especially the high school where we do have room, if there's some way we could accommodate, and I don't know to what degree there'd be an interest, but that we could accommodate people that would like to come and speak to us.
I would have no problem. I would be in total agreement with, if we have the space that we can allow it, we do all the things that we need to do, then I no problem.
We're gathering, so it could not exceed
Right, so
50 people totally.
We might have to ask people to let us know in advance that they'd like to come. And again, we usually don't get bombarded with people, but occasionally we have a good number. I think if they had to register or just communicate that they wanted to come, then we would know how many we needed to accommodate. Just something to think about.
Thank you, Mark. Can I get a motion to return to executive session to discuss personnel related? Second?
Okay.
So
Mrs.
I'll-
Giller,
Yes.
Mr. Pascal, Mr. Jackson? Mrs. Dion? Mrs. Carey? Mr. Annaly?
Yes.
Okay, we'll adjourn the meeting 7:09. Thank you, everybody, for participating, and we'll see you next time.